Hey everybody, welcome to In Theory. I am Brett Ziegler. It's so good to see all of you tuned in today. This is great. A lot of the regulars, that's pretty awesome. Good to see you. And hi Cassie, welcome. Good to see you. I know you've popped in a few times over the weeks, but yeah, it's always good to see you on here. That's cool. Oh, that's great. Yes, refresh if you don't see me. But if you needed to refresh, you wouldn't hear me say that just now, so it's not doing you any good. I'm sorry. But it's in the chat. That's enough. That's good. We are going to combine a few different things today. Hopefully we can break this thing right down. I have talked tons about 2-5-1s in the jazz context in terms of different ways we can practice, different voicings we can use. I've also talked a lot about tritone substitutions. We've done some whole hours on that idea and why they work, even why they're called tritone substitutions, because there's kind of two weirdo reasons that they're called that. One is that the chord you're substituting is a tritone away. That is true. It's also true that the chord you're substituting and the chord you're substituting it for both share the same tritone inside the chord, right? So there's that same strange tritone tension interval that exists in one dominant seventh chord and in the one that's a tritone away. And we'll cover all that now if you're like, I don't understand words Brett's saying. But we have talked about that stuff a lot, and we're just going to bring it all together right now in an R&B context and talk about one of the most common secondary dominants, secondary 2-5-1s, and tritone substitutions, kind of all in one package. We're going to R&B-ify the 2-5-1 that you see all over the place. And I think it's arguable that this actually comes from more of a gospel space, but it's a really cool secondary 2-5-1 or secondary dominant. So I think we see them all the time. Yes, tritone inception. That's true as well. Yeah, let's start with that. This idea of the tritone substitution. And we're not going to see that until later in this hour. It's actually going to be as we build this tiny little cadence, short little cadence. This is the last thing that we will add to it. But let's talk about it first, because it's one of the more kind of confusing concepts, I think, but really helpful nonetheless. So here's the idea of a tritone substitution. If we were in the key of C, which is often a place I start, I want to live on this Rhodes today, unless you can't hear it so well. So this is an electric piano from the late 60s or early 70s is when it started, and kind of just a beautiful sound that lends itself to a lot of this kind of R&B sound that we're talking about. Thank you for your encouragement, Jeff. That's awesome. The most basic 2-5-1 that we would talk about once we're into seventh chords like this is like a D minor 7 if this is the 2 chord. I nearly cover this every week, but the idea that if you walk up a scale, there are chords that naturally just show up. I'm doing it in C major, so that there's no sharps or flats. There are no black notes. We first learn about triads, the idea that I can walk up the scale and I get major and minor chords and one oddball chord, a diminished triad. This is not major or minor. And then back home. So I'm just glossing over this, assuming that we're there already. Yell it out and freak out if you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So our 1 chord is major when we're walking up a major scale. We've got a 2 minor. We've got a 3 minor. We've got a 4 major and a 5 major and a 6 minor. And here's the strange one. This is our diminished triad, but it's a really close relative, as we're about to see, to the 5 chord. If I take this diminished triad and then add a new root to it below, you can see how it's really similar to this G7 chord. So the 7 and the 5 are super close relatives. And I would say in pop music we see the 7 very rarely, but all the notes in the 7 chord are included in extended versions of the 5 chord. So this is diminished triad, this is a G7 chord, right? And even if I extend this and do this half diminished chord, this is a B minor 7 flat 5 or B half diminished. And if I add a root below that, we would call this a G9 chord because it's all the notes of a G7 extended. Just remember that 9s, 11s, and 13ths, if they're in the chord name, that means we're always starting with the dominant 7th chord. G7, add a 9, add an 11, add a 13, and we would just write that as G9, G11, G13. This is my favorite voicing for 13 chords. I did a whole hour on this a long time ago if you want to look up 13 chords, like a G13. This is also the same voicing, and here we're relating to tritone business. This is the same voicing I would use for a flat or a sharp 9 chord. And notice the root is a tritone away. Same 3 notes. On the top, I've got this F, this B, and this E. That can build me a G13 chord. I have the root. I have this F, which is the 7 and the 3rd. These two make up the tritone. This is the business end of the chord. This is what's making it a dominant 7 chord. The 2 important notes to make this a dominant 7 chord. No extra, you didn't miss it yet. We're just building the building blocks and then we'll put it all into an R&B style cadence today. But I'm in tritone substitution land. I've got a G13. This is the 13, which is the 6 transposed up an octave. So we call them a 13 because it's an extension beyond the G7 chord. This is my favorite voicing for a 13 chord. But then when I move this root a tritone, I have a chord, but it is the tritone substitution land is very much a scary place. I go to many scary lands, but we find our way around it. We explore. It's going to be good. This is the Jimi Hendrix chord. This is the sharp 9 chord. I'm not going to play too many notes that name a specific Jimi Hendrix chord, but there are like 5 songs that I can think of off the top of my head that clearly use this chord all over the place. But now we're in D flat, and notice that this is now the 3rd, and this is now the 7th, right? Because this is based on a D flat 7 chord. A dominant 7 chord built on B flats. No shutdown, you're right. 3rd and the 7th, and then this straggler is the sharp 9. Here's the 1, here's the 2, here's the 3, and between those, so the 2 is also called the 9, because that's how we label them in chords. It's just an octave up from the 2. Just add 7 and you get it transposed up an octave. So this would be a D flat 9 chord, and we're doing a D flat sharp 9 chord, which just means raise it. Does that make sense? So a D flat 7 sharp 9, you can spell with the same notes, their letter names have to change, as a 13 chord. So this is just an example of how there are huge connections in dominant 7 chords between one key and the one that's a tritone away. Two funky chords, but very different chords from each other. So, like I was saying, there are two reasons why we call these tritone substitutions. And I have studied and studied and studied, and I cannot get a definitive answer as to why they're really called tritone substitutions. Because there are two really good reasons that you'd call them that. One is that the chord, the root, is a tritone apart. That is true. But the other good reason is that these two chords share the same tritone in their voicings. They have the same 3rd and 7th, but they swap. Right? If I'm here, if I'm in the key of G, this is my 3rd, and this is my 7th, and we would spell those as a B and an F. B and an F. Oh, just a reminder what a tritone is. That's good. Thank you for asking. Is that we are 3 whole tones, 3 whole steps away. And that's a shorthand name that we use for this interval because it's either a 4th that's been stretched or it's a 5th that's been shrunken. And we would have to spell them differently depending on what chords we're playing and how we spell them. But this interval is the high tension interval that is larger than a perfect 4th and smaller than a perfect 5th. So sometimes we call this an augmented 4th, which just means a 4th that's been made bigger. And sometimes we call it a diminished 5th, a perfect 5th that's been made smaller. So when I use my example in the keys that I've been in, if I'm building a G7 chord with just these 3 notes, we call this the shell when we're just using the 3rd and 7th, just using the most important notes of the chord. I can spell a G7 like this. This is like the closed form, root position, 1, 3, 5, 7. But we can get away with just these 3 notes. And if we've got the root covered in the left hand, we don't also need to play it in the right hand necessarily. We can, but we don't need to. We also don't need the 5th. You know, this is the full structure of the chord, has the 5th in the chord, but we don't need it to get the point across that this is a G7. We do need the 3rd that tells us it's major. The triad is major. And we do need the 7th so that we hear the color of this chord, that it's not a G major 7, and it's not a G minor 7th. See how just the 1, 3, and 7 can give you all these different chords? I've got a G7, I shrink this down, and I've got a G minor 7, because I've got a minor 3rd and a minor 7th. I can go to a major 7th. Boop. Yeah. Here's a major 7th, because I've got a major 3rd, and I've got a major 7th. I could even, I suppose, do the minor with the major 7th. These are the core notes of the, what we call the bond chord, right? Actually, the full James Bond chord always has a 9th as well. Right? Minor with a major 7. And we've talked about that before. I don't want to bring up my old tricks, but I think we did a whole hour on this chord, did we? Or was it just part of something else? I forget. But the minor major 7 is a beautiful but not too often used chord. compared to all these other ones. Anyway, all to say, this is enough to give us a G7, 1, 3, and 7. Then if I go a tritone away, this is now the third of a D flat chord, and this is now the seventh. Notice how spellings change too. If this is a G7, I have to call this a B, and I have to call this an F, because it's G, B, D, F. All the notes have to be a third apart, which means they're 2 letter names apart. G, B, D, F, easy peasy. When I do this, this is still an F if I'm a D flat, F, the rest of the chord, an A flat, and this has to be called a C flat because, again, the chord letter names all have to be 2 apart because we build chords in thirds. D, D flat, F, A flat, C flat. So if this is F and C flat, then this is a diminished fifth because we've got the F letter name and the C letter name telling us this is a diminished fifth. And when we were back in G, this was an augmented fourth because this is an F and a B. And those are 3 letter names apart. So we spell it like fourth. Does that make sense? Changing letter names, changing the function of these notes, 7, 3, 3, 7. And those are the 2 reasons we would call these tritone substitutions for each other. So an easy version of that is to go make my 2, 5, 1, D minor 7, G7 to a C major 7. This is a good one to be able to follow. If this is confusing you, just roll back in this after it's all over and take some time to sort this out. D minor 7, 1, 3, 7. Right? Bring this down. And of course it's nutty that I'm tucking my fingers in. We shouldn't do that normally. I'm doing this for the sake of theory to be able to see the chording more easily. But this is the G7. And now I open it up to make a C major 7. 2, 2 minor 7, 5, 5, 7. Opening it up to 1 major 7. And if I go 2, tritone substitution, and down to 1, that has the same function. I use the same tritone in my right hand when I walk down. So there, I'm using the tritone even within the chord. I'm just using the tritone substitution as a passing note. Right? That switching between the G, which is the true 5, and the flat 2, which is substituting for the 5, a tritone away. Right? So I don't even have to pick between the 5 and the substitution. I can just make that a passing note if I want, on the way home to the 1 chord. Are we tracking with most of that? So that's a 2, 5, 1, and the substitution for the 5 happening in there. And we're going to pull all of that into the example we're doing today. Let's start living in the key of F. There's a lot of different genres of piano that love to live in the flatted keys more, but rather than diving right into like E flat or G flat, like having a full boat of flats, I'm just going to live in F for a little bit. Connecting it to the 2, 5, 1, 4. Absolutely. So here we come. One of the things I'll say is that one of the things in lots of R&B chord progressions is that they will borrow chords in simple ways of using 4 minor when you would expect 4 to be major because we're in a major key. When I just do this, it sounds super dramatic, right? We know this sound. I'm in F, I play B flat minor instead of major. Right? That's the super dramatic sound. And then going for major to minor to 1. That's a big trope in pop music. But lots of R&B progressions just choose the 4 minor. I'm just going from F to B flat minor, which is technically a borrowed chord because it doesn't fit. This D flat doesn't live in the key of F. But now let's add some sevenths to some of these too, and add some color to all of this. Let's change my 1 chord to a major 7, F, A, C, E. And I'll change my 4 chord to a 4 major 7. So this is a B flat major 7. And this is really normal. This is completely diatonic, right? This is just using chords. So try this exercise when you have time, some other time. F major 7 to B flat major 7. And now let me use a B minor 7 instead, because we're making the 4 chord minor. Right? Notice how very different that sound is. Because this is now taking a note that is not inside of the F major. Right? And not only that, but because I've taken this and made it minor, and also made it a minor 7, this is also a note that doesn't exist inside of the F major scale. Right? F major just has B flat. But to get this B minor 7 chord in here. I'm not just borrowing the D flat from other keys. I also have to use an A flat that doesn't live inside of the F major chord. So this definitely sounds like a departure. It's like the flat 6 major chord that we studied before. What's it called? The Billy Shears chord? The Mario theme song ending. And this has been described as borrowing from the minor, borrowing from the Aeolian scale. Because if I were in F minor and had the natural minor, that would give me all the notes for this, all the notes for this, all the notes for this, and all the notes from, well, no. This is not in the minor because this is the major, but it's borrowing to get a 4 minor 7 or a 5 minor 7 or a flat 6 major or a flat 6 or a flat 7 major. Right? If I'm in the key of F, but I'm borrowing things from F natural minor, I can get this, and 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 then I'm back home. So that's the same notes we're talking about, the same borrowing we're talking about. Really cool. So back to our progression here. I'm just going from 1 major 7 to 4 minor 7. F major 7 to B flat minor 7. And the reason that this works to use a 5 minor or 4 minor is because we're borrowing chords from the tonic minor. F natural minor gives us this 4 chord, this 5 chord, this 6 chord. We could go to here if we want. And then we don't borrow. Right? This would be the 1 chord in F minor. But we're back to major. Right? Now the thing we're going to talk about is if I'm here and I have a next passage that's moving to the 4 chord, one of the ways to get there is to do a 2-5-1 of the 4 chord. So let's back that up and say, how would we get here? Let's say I want to land on this B flat major 7. This is my 4 chord of F major, right? So the 2 of this would be a C minor 7. The 5 of this would be an F7, 2, 5, 1. Are you following? C minor 7 to F7 to B flat, major 7. So remember, we're in the key of F, so we're going to pull that out of nowhere while we're all in. Here's just my major, F major 7, B flat major 7. This is a totally normal 1 to 4 progression. So I'm here, and then I'll go straight into my 2, 5, 1 of 4. Right? You would recognize that sound from many pop songs. But I'm here, just going between 1 and 4. And we're going to do this again, 1 to the 5 minor, which is the 2 of the 2, 5, 1. 2, C minor 7, F7, and that leads us to this 4 chord. And now we're in a different part of the song, right? We can tell that now every phrase was starting with the 1. Now this is the 4th of F. So the target is B flat. Key of F, the 4 is B flat. So I'm doing a 2, 5, 1 of B flat as a way to get there from the key of F. So I'm just happily in the key of F. And now I want to get propelled into B flat. So I have this borrowed chord that comes out of nowhere. This doesn't live in the key of F, but it's a C minor 7 to an F7, which wouldn't come naturally in the key of F either, right? Because we would expect major 7s. This is where we just were, right? We were just on this F major 7. We were just on this F major 7 as a 1 chord. Then here it comes. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Right? So those set us up into B flat using chords that are in B flat but aren't in the key of F, the key that we're actually in, our home key. Right? Does that make sense? 1 to 4. Nothing unusual here. 1 to 4. Nothing unusual here. 1 to 4. And then, okay, here it goes. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's a good point, X-Ray. So that would be called a secondary dominant is the 5 chord part of it. So having a dominant 7 chord that doesn't exist usually in that key, in the key that you're in. So that's just called a secondary dominant. To borrow a dominant chord as a 5 chord to something else, right? That's step 1, but we're taking it one step further and borrowing the 2 minor 7 chord before that. So now we're doing a secondary 2-5-1, right? This is a 2-5-1 of something that is not the normal one. So you can have those for every degree of this scale, right? You can have a 2-5-1 of 2, you can have a 2-5-1 of 5. But here are some special things about the 2-5-1 of 4 and why it's used all the time. First of all, the 4 chord is a common chord for like the bridge of a song or the B section of a song. It feels relatively still at home. It's a place where you'd have, you know, your first idea stated a lot, and then living off the 4 chord is a common thing for the bridge of a song, like I said, the B section of a song. So there's lots of reasons why the 4 is something we'd want to be propelled into for a section of a song. So this is a good way to do that, to like make B flat feel like the home within the home, right? To kind of like highlight it a bit more than just playing a B flat chord out of the blue. Another special thing about the 2-5-1 of 4 is that the 5 chord in the 2-5-1 of 4 is our tonic, is home, right? If I go 2-5-1 to land on the B flat, this was the 1 chord, right? We're already in F. But we're using a 1 dominant 7 in the key of F from the point of view of the key of F. But this is the 5 of 4. So even just being in the key of F and bringing an F7 out of nowhere kind of tells us that the 4 chord is coming up. If I just went F to F7 to B flat, that is enough, right? That is enough to give us the tension to tell us that we're going to B flat. Anytime you feel the pain, just sing a sneaky little bit of a Beatles song. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah, that's correct, Josh. So that is an example of using an F that feels like we're at home. This is the 1 chord. If there was a 7th chord, it would be a major 7 chord. This is all reinforcing F, right? It is in the same key. Good call. Yeah, this is the stock key for that unmentionable song. And suddenly we hear a dominant 7. We're like, what? This is not the 5 chord of F. The only 5-7 that should exist in F would be the C7, right? So we've got a 1 dominant 7, and that's pulling us towards. Oh yeah, we're going to try tone sub very soon, Greg. Don't you worry. So we've got a 1, and then the 5 major, the 5 minor, which is the 2-5-1. But remember, I was just doing a progression that borrowed from minor and had B minor 7ths all over the place. And I can still do that with a 2-5-1 in front of it. Go 2, of B flat, 5 of B flat, and land on the minor 7 instead of the major 7. See how these two notes have to change. I'm using what the F major scale gives us. And now I'm doing what the minor scale, the F minor scale gives us. So I can go F, and now I'm using these chords. A 4 minor 7 and a 5 minor 7. So still in the key of F, but all of this is coming from F minor. F major 7 to B flat major 7, F major 7 to B flat major 7, again F major 7, B flat major 7, 1. Let's do our transition again. That's the 2, 5 of 4. C minor 7, F7 of 4. And I could do the 2, 5, 1 of 4 minor 7 too, and that gets me the same result. Does that make sense? The B in the bass, did I get there? That's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. So instead of 2, 5, 1, I can do this with a B7 on the way to this B flat. And that is a tritone substitution, right? But then I'll show you an even cooler thing, but we'll start with this. This is a straight B7. So I'm here. F major 7, B flat major 7. Okay, last time, here we go. And that was a tritone substitution with a straight B7 on the way to B flat major 7. See how that note stays common? B7 to B flat major 7. This comes out of nowhere, the C minor 7, that's not in the key of F, which would exist in like Mixolydian, and it's like, oh, is that what we're doing? Is this a Mixolydian thing? We've got a 5 minor 7, but this is set up as the 2, 5, substituting. Instead of going to the F7, I'm just going to the B. Right? And could I do that going to the minor 7 too? Sure, why not? We're here, F major 7, B flat major 7, again. Okay, last time. Now I'm doing the minor 4, minor 5 thing. Let's say that's the song. We just built something. B flat minor 7 to C minor 7. Back home. Right? So this is substituting the F7 that would have shown up with the B7. But one more thing I want to show you, because the 5 and the flat 2, which is the tritone sub away, have so many notes in common, you can think of all the notes of the F7 as being part of the B7 if you know how to name them and can kind of articulate what you're hearing. So here's the example about that. This is a really fun thing. I'm going to do the F7 like I was doing before in the right hand. But I'm going to build it over the B. Now, how does that work? We can instantly listen to this and say, oh, this is just gross. This is clashy. Right? I'm doing F7 notes on the way to B flat major 7 or on the way to B flat minor 7. Either way. But how can I tritone sub in my left hand and not change a stinking thing in my right hand? Well, here's how. We've talked about how the tritone is shared. If I was doing F7, this is the 3rd, and this is the 7th, right? F, A, C, E flat. A, E flat. If I'm looking at that from the point of view of B, the top note here is the 3rd, and this one's the 7th. B, D sharp, F sharp, A. Right? But if I do this, how do I explain these two notes that don't fit into the B7 chord? Can anyone think of a name for these two? I'm doing F7 over B, but we're not going to really call it that because these two can belong into a B chord. But how? Remember, I've got B flat, I got B, D sharp, and the A, and suddenly I'm using an F and a C, F and a C. So how we would label these is altered chord notes. I'm bringing this up because we've talked about altered chords in a previous lesson. And in the Jesus Molina course, there's tons of talk of the altered chords. And in the R&B course, I think he touches on some altered chords too. So in the key of B, this C would be what? The flat 9. Very good. Very good. Yeah, very good, Josh. This is a flat 9, right? And a flat 5. I do this, I have a B9, easy peasy. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then just the 5 repeated. So this is a B9 chord. Oh, excuse me. Which is just a B7 extended, right? But if I look at this, this is a B7, flat 5, flat 9. Right? So really crunchy, really colorful, but still can function as a B7 chord. Right? So that's how related the tritone chords are, is that I can do this, or right? So this is my 2, 5, 1 into B flat, 2, 5, 1 into B flat, but walking it down instead, but still using all the F7 notes on this B. So this is a B7, flat 5, flat 9. And this can take us into the B flat major 7, or it can take us into the B flat minor 7. So I'm going to do that in this progression I had just made up last time, where I've got the 1 and the 4, and I do that 3 times. I'm trying to read. Back to the 1 and the 4. Last time. B minor 7, C minor 7. B minor 7, B flat minor 7 I should say, C minor 7. Back to the A section. Last time. Right? I'll do this one more time. All borrowed chords from F minor. And back to F major. Does that make sense? So as promised at the beginning, this includes the idea of tritone substitution. It includes the secondary 2-5-1 of 4. But I've chosen some borrowed chords from F minor, which this chord is too, right? So when we're in normal major, and this 5 minor comes up, 5 minor 7. This could be just, oh, he's borrowing chords from the F minor scale, the like tonic minor scale. But this is also functional because it's the 2 of 4, and this is the 5 of 4, but tritone substituted, right? B7, flat 5, flat 9, which is the same as saying F7, but just with the tritone substituted only in the bass. And then this borrowed chord. Borrowed chord. Okay, one question coming in about spelling out the 2-5-1. So I'm going to do these chords in root position closed to describe what those chords are for sure. Just one more time here as we end. So we kind of do this at the beginning of this in the key of C. The idea that the chord built on the second degree of a chord, if we're back in C, doing a 2 chord, which is going to be the D minor in the key of C, or the D7 in the key of C, and then closing that into a 5-7, which is the natural chord that shows up in the key of C. Right? If I just walk up making four notes, thirds apart, I call this taking the snowman and walking them up, because that's how it looks like on sheet music. But this is a 4-ball snowman walking up the staff, right? In the key of C, so there's no black notes. This is the natural 2 chord that shows up, a 2 minor 7, D minor 7. And this is the 5 that shows up, the dominant 7, and that's called that because the dominant is the 5th degree of the scale, and this chord shape only shows up on the 5th degree of the scale. We have major 7, minor 7, minor 7, major 7, 7, this rando weird chord that only shows up on the dominant. So this is a G7 is the chord symbol for this. A minor 7, A M7, B minor 7 flat 5, which like I said before, the 7 is really related to the 5. It's just a G9 with no G in it, basically, is the B minor 7 flat 5. And then back home to the C major 7. And this is a natural cadence that finds its way into so much pop music, so much jazz music is really built on 2-5-1s. If not the one in the key that you're in at the time, other 2-5-1s, this combination of a minor 7 followed by a dominant 7. You know, if you look at any old jazz standard chart, a minor 7 followed by a 7 chord that's, you know, a few letter names away, is probably a 2-5-1 of something. So this is the only 2-5-1 that lives on its own in C, 2-5-1. But then if I add some black notes in the key of C here, I can suddenly go 2-5-1 and end up in the key of F. Right, I was in the key of C, all in root position, but then out of the clear blue, I decided to do a G minor 7, and then a C7. Both of those have black notes, so we know they're not in the key of C major. But that is the 2-5 of 4, which is what we're talking about today. The 2-5-4. 2-5 of 4. Does that make sense? Tritone sub for G would be the D flat, that's right. But the tritone, so we're in the key of C. So if I wanted to do a 2, flat 2 to 1, right? Or if I was doing the 2, 5, 1 of 4 in the key of C, I started with this, and then I could do an F sharp 7, on the way to this F. Or to make it the same as the example we've just been doing, I can do that C7 that I would go to. So I'm doing a C7 with the F sharp in the bass. Three-7, and then again we find ourselves with a flat 9 and a flat 5, right? I'm C7ing, C7, C7 tritone subbed gives us an F sharp, but with the flat 5 and the flat 9, right? So that's doing what we were just doing in the key of F in the key of C. I hope that makes sense. Right? And then switching over to the minor 7 and the minor, or the minor 4 and the minor 5. So yeah, hopefully that was breaking it down in bite-sized pieces. And this is like some of the palette that gets painted from a lot in the key of, not in the key of, in the genres of R&B, right? R&B and soul will often use minor chords instead of major chords for 4s and 5s, which is borrowing from the minor tonic, but it also opens itself to all these cool 2-5-1s that propel us into different keys or different chords of the scale. So this was all about the 2-5-1 of 4. Hope you enjoyed it. Spend a lot of time at the piano this week. I hope you get a chance to do that. And we will see you next week on In Theory. Thanks so much. Bye.